Now, what is happening in New Zealand keeps astonishing me. It's sinister new race politics, it's new health fascism, it's harsh lockdowns, it's draconian plans to fight global warming by taxing cattle burps, and now the latest sign of authoritarianism, it's plan to ban smoking for future generations, a plan now urged in Australia too. Here is New Zealand's Associate Health Minister explaining the end of the freedom to smoke in New Zealand, even in private.
We are legislating for a smoke-free generation by making it an offence to sell or supply tobacco products to those aged 14 when the law comes into effect. As they age, they and future generations will never legally be able to purchase tobacco because the truth is there is no safe age to start smoking.
The way it works is each year goes by, the ban extends to older people. So if you're 14 now, you'll never be able to legally buy cigarettes in New Zealand. Now, you may be like me, you loathe smoking, support bans on smokers stinking up your air. But this ban takes government bullying to a disturbing new level. Yet just one party in the New Zealand Parliament, the ACT Party, has said it's against. Joining me is the leader of ACT, David Seymour. David Seymour, thank you so much for your time. Why is your party against this bill?
Well, there's no longer a public interest in further regulating smoking. We tax smokers to the extent that they are more than paying for any impact they have on the healthcare system. We have informed smokers to the point that I don't know anyone who doesn't think that smoking is dangerous. And we have regulated where people can smoke to the point where you can't smoke at work, you can't smoke in hospitality venues, you can't smoke anywhere except outdoor areas and your own home. So what is the remaining public interest? You can be as anti-smoking as you like, but that's not the question. There is no remaining public reason to further regulate smoking. They're only harming themselves. Fully informed, I think people should be able to make such choices.
You make the argument perfectly. This goes beyond any public interest. This is actual interference in the right of a person to abuse their body any way they choose without hurting anyone else. I just can't believe that this is now proposed. But what I also can't believe is that no other party joins you in knocking back, pushing back on this. Why would that be?
Well, I think the other parties are simply afraid to speak truth to what is out of control power. We now have control for control's sake. There's another aspect of this law that you may be interested in. They also want to limit the range of places that can sell tobacco and limit the amount of nicotine in cigarettes. Now, this last one is particularly stupid because nicotine, while addictive, is not in itself harmful. It's all the tar and the toxins you get while trying to feed your nicotine addiction that actually harm you. But if you reduce the amount of nicotine per cigarette, people are likely to compensate by getting more tar and toxins out of cigarettes that don't have as much nicotine per drag. This is just how completely illogical the policy has become. What's more, it will mean the only way to get high nicotine cigarettes will be at the black market. The New Zealand government has currently allocated $2.5 million to fight the black market for tobacco. That will be a growth industry, unfortunately.
Well, that's exactly the case, isn't it? As soon as you create a law banning something, you immediately create a class of criminals and you give incentive and you create a market for breaking that law. So that's almost certain now going to happen. Look, the thing here is, and I mentioned a few issues that I've had problems with New Zealand. I've had guests from New Zealand talking about these things. There seems to me to be a new authoritarianism in Jacinda Ardern's New Zealand. Is that how you see it? Does it disturb you?
Well, I think Jacinda Ardern, after her extraordinary election result in 2020, misread the mandate. She thought that she was being asked to implement all of her wonderful ideas. In truth, people were behaving in quite unusual ways due to the trauma of COVID-19, or perhaps more accurately, her government's response to COVID-19. The government is slowly unravelling and losing its popularity because people are slowly waking up to them, and they're discovering that actually people didn't want all of the magical policies that they dreamed up as student politicians, which is where most of them came from. So I don't see it as being as sinister as some people do. I think they got too much political power. They're deeply misguided. They don't live in the real world. But that doesn't mean that they're not doing real damage. And you're starting to see an outflow of New Zealanders. Unfortunately for New Zealand, the safety valve for our country is that when things get bad, people start to leave until the policies improve. And we're going to face a very expensive loss of skilled people over the coming year or so as a result of the approach this government's taken.
Extraordinary scenes. David Seymour, thank you so much indeed for your time.